Lucas, you spend a lot of time with our customers. I would say, I mean, at this point, you must be 30 or 40 projects into MDM. What are the kind of common, I hate to say mistakes, but what are you seeing time after time that's stopping success in people implementing MDM?
Yeah, there's quite a few that I can mention just from top of my head, but one of the primary ones that I see is that people tend to go for a big bang deployment in one go, and integrate CRM, ERP systems in one kind of going live cycle. And the problem with that is really that you take a long time. You take 6 to 12 months, perhaps even sometimes, without your business seeing any value. And when it does come around, there's always that feedback. There's always the changes you might need to do to the common data model to make it fit, and that's going to be a bit of a pain. So I always suggest that we start off small, take one system, implement that, deliver it to the business, take the next one, and go like that.
I think historically this has been general good advice across all data projects. You hear people say, don't boil the ocean. You can probably find 20 idioms for this, but start small and then get value. And then I think for me, although that's good advice, I guess traditionally, to your point, is that the technology has kind of made that hard in a way, is in that often you're having to kind of forecast how all of that data is going to fit together. And that's why I can imagine people start off small and then say, well, wait a second, we've got customer data in that other system, and that other system, shouldn't we actually kind of look at what that will look like so we can bring this data together? And for me, this has traditionally been where the biggest failure rate has happened with MDM. And it kind of almost seems like an insurmountable challenge of how am I going to forecast what that final solution will look like? And often it kind of forgets that there should be more data to come. I want more systems and more data and public data that I, to some degree, don't even have control over. Talk me through some of the kind of ways that CluedIn helps with our customers in solving this particular problem.
Yep. So, of course, we always try to guide people the right way. We focus on the customer. For example, if we're dealing with a company that deals with people, right? People's data. We always tackle the customers first, from however many systems there may be. We provide that back to the business, and then we start looking around, right? So typically we deduplicate. We perhaps do some manual cleaning on that data. We start looking at enrichment, which technically is another source from the public internet or any other data provider services. Of course, there is a point where you also start looking at building the relationships and building hierarchies, and that typically sometimes requires some additional data, like transactions, to be pulled into the system. So it's basically, our way of thinking is that what does provide you the most value, the quickest? Let's tackle these first, and then all of these nice to haves, let's bring them on as we go.
Yeah, evolve it over time. And I think that's such a more achievable, but imagine the cognitive load involved in trying to figure out, right, I've just onboarded a new data set. All right, back to the drawing board. What was that old model I worked on 6 months ago, and how does this fit in? And how easy is it going to be to adapt to change? What's the impact analysis of me realizing later on, oh, the world has changed? They say, I guess the industry says that MDM is very much a combination of different pillars like technology and great people. I would argue that's the case in any project, is great people is important. They talk about process being super important in MDM. And of course, finally, they say, and this is, I would argue, a tricky thing to crack, is how do I get my teams excited about what can be done with data, not only from the value that can be generated by data, but also how do I make our data more valuable as well? In your opinion, what role does technology have in that?
Do you mean in delivering that excitement, or just in a general sense how good the technology is and how easy it is to adapt?
I think there's a natural knock-on effect that, obviously when projects are going swimmingly, there is a natural kind of excitement that comes around the business. But I would say let's zoom out general and kind of think, for solving what MDM is tasked to solve. And, the way we think about that is really, I want to break down silos of data, and I want to bring the non-technical data experts in somehow. And I don't want them to be coders, and I don't want them to have to learn about data models and very technical things, even though those are very important. I'm bringing them on because they actually know the data itself. So what role generically do you think technology and what impact does it really have in that quadrant of those 4 pillars?
So some of the things that you mentioned, like, for example, I skeleton something out on a whiteboard and that becomes my data model. And then 6 months later, I realize it doesn't fit anymore. With more modern technologies, you can actually change that model very easily.
Yes.
It's not an issue. And when it comes to general use of MDM platforms, it's to me, it's always easy to use interface and undoing things, because mistakes happen. People can click the wrong button,
of course.
And as long as you can undo, that makes the end customer actually feel very safe at using it, because, well, their actions can be undone. And to some degree, I think also sandbox features help. So, for example, if you're cleaning your data in a sandboxed environment that's not necessarily changing your golden records yet, then you also have that freedom of saying, well, I'll work on this project for 2 weeks. I'll see what it looks like, and maybe I'll publish it.
Yeah, so there's this like almost you kind of feel the ability to be exploratory with ideas about how to increase the value of data. I was just recently on a call just before this, and what we were talking about is that there seems to be 2 ways to implement MDM. And for those listening to this that have a technical background, it's almost uncannily the same as what we've seen in the data warehouse space, where if you look at implementing a data warehouse, great initiative, every single company's done a couple of them. And really the kind of, I don't want to say traditional approach, but I guess if we're going on a time scale, there was a way we did it before, and there's a way that we mostly do it now. So the kind of classic approach with warehousing was always about, right, what do those dimensions look like? And they map very nicely into business domains typically. And we had to be very analytical, and somewhat the first 6 months, we turned that system off. Because what we did is we went out to the business and said, I need to gather requirements. I need to gather requirements of, what are you going to query for? What are you going to query for? What data do you need for your reports? And then we got all of that, and then we kind of scurried back and we worked really hard to somehow build this beautiful model off a very small amount of data sources, sticking to your rule before, start small, right? Maybe just 2 tables in 2 different systems. And if you fast forward to kind of the modern warehouse, the lake house, it said, you know what, that idea of trying to build that model up front, it didn't go too well, did it? It was very warming, and it felt predictable. It really, often felt like after you'd done that model, you could sit back and everyone sighs of, oh, right, things are going to get better. And to some degree, the premise was, it might be hard to get it in, but the idea is once it's in, everybody will easily understand this. And this just was not the case. And what it also often did was it turned these systems, warehouses and MDMs, into Fort Knox. No one wanted to change them. And therefore, it was really not tempting for the managers of those systems to bring on new data sources, because they realized the impact. There are some core critical systems that run directly off this data, and change is really not a great idea. And the lake house came along and it said, no, you'll be changing all the time. You don't have to do that upfront modeling. And one of the big, fuels of that was the cloud. And we talk about the cloud for obviously this is nothing new, but one of the things I think we don't often appreciate is that the cloud offered us new ways of solving problems that weren't possible before. This simple fact, probably not so simple to build, but simply communicated is, hey, if you want, I could rent you 100 machines for 25 seconds. I'll charge you for the 25 seconds for the 100 machines. But overall, the cost is not going to be huge because you've only run them for 25 seconds. And then I'm going to tear them down and, you can get them again if you want. And that, what it did is it said, wow, maybe we don't have to plan as much for what we foresee could come. We could adapt with that infrastructure behind it. And I think that's one of the big things that we've cracked in the MDM space is leveraging that same idea of it's probably not an easy task. Many amazing people have tried before us. How about the concept of you'll have your data in multiple models, many models. And as we fight to get it into that canonical model, it's still worth a fight. A lot of companies still want to achieve this for very good reasons. They might have auditing reasons. They might have operational reasons why it's just much easier for our ERP system to run if the data looks like this. So very great ambitions to do that. But let's not lock up the data in an attempt to fit that in. Let's a little bit more like, yep, and you can have it in other ways that are a little bit simpler for us to achieve. I'm not sure if you have any anecdotes from customers where you've seen this value kind of sign through you can give.
I think I have from the opposite side, right, where there has been models built, and these models are immutable. And we had a project which was success. We ingested data in the way that that model told us to, and then the same customer rang us around a year later, and they were like, "Hey, CluedIn, we have just acquired a new company." And now they come with a whole suite of all new systems. Nothing works anymore. Nothing fits into our model. What can we do? How can we solve it? Right. So it's it is. I think the new the modern approach with the kind of flexible model is the way for the enterprise because everything is constantly changing, right? You have new departments being created, new systems acquired, new companies acquired. Maybe the enterprise itself gets acquired, right? And you have to be flexible. Otherwise, you are effectively just creating more and more data silos yourself within your organization.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's zoom out from MDM in general, and even just some of these concepts seem so daunting to even think about. Change 100%. Not only is it inevitable, but you want that. You don't want to adapting to change. Is a great thing, but I think what we need to be thinking about is, enabling change, right? Enabling that, listen, if we were to acquire that company, we've got a good foundation. We should be able to get them onboarded. 14 days, the data's now consolidated and we can move on. And these are multi-year projects of migration. Just imagine that the kind of costs associated with that. And the other thing I would say is, really all this is about is breaking down a big complex problem into smaller chunks. And in general, that's the way you kind of solve everything in life. Instead of having this kind of brick wall, right, what's your data supposed to look like? Aren't you supposed to help me with that? And that's where I think there's a big difference between traditional and the kind of modern flexible approach is. It's not about letting, it's not the Wild West. Rather, it's saying, instead of doing that from A to B, what about I give you steps A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so forth, and you'll eventually get that to what you want. But every step along the way is going to be simple to solve instead of this big bang. And I think, this is, for me, if I was asked, what do I see as kind of one of the bigger traps people fall into in implementing MDM. And this is one thing that actually even technology that's very flexible, it really still requires a mindset that wants to be flexible. And often the moment you kind of, put data into a system and you say, this is it, this is the record from now, and everybody's got to use it. I think the guarantee is, no, it's not. It will change all the time. And you, master data management, will not always have the best record. That's just, life. People just move at different speeds, and consolidation of that problem is going to always be an issue, no matter the technology. Maybe I'll finish with this question. We talk about these issues, and I think I would tend to agree with the market that the technology is very much something that helps the process. And I'm going to disagree with the market slightly by saying a good technology will make the other parts easier. And this was a point that you had, Lucas, before of, well, if you had a system that says I'm easy to change, and you had a technology that says I'm not easy to change, there's a difference that technology has helped with. One has unlocked a path, and the other has caused a problem for you. But out of those 4 pillars of culture, process, people, and technology, where do you lie on where, I guess, the main focus needs to be put on as a business to make sure overall as a success, MDM is a net positive?
It's a good question. I would say somewhere between process, culture, and technology, right? If we take that triangle, somewhere between there, because frequently you have processes that are built to be, pardon from my language, to be very stubborn, and that prevents people from being very effective at what they do. There's technology that's built the same way, right? That can be stubborn. Right. And then there is also the culture that I see it more often than I would like to, where people are just, the business users are just intimidated in a way to start touching the data, to start maybe manually cleaning that data, pushing it through some automation, because there is a real consequence on the other side, of course, as there always is, but you are effectively making it better, but that change scares people, and
yes,
that's something that we really need to solve in this industry, I think.
Yeah, I think naturally they all have some connection to each other, right? In that you might have the most amazing data culture where everybody is championing it, but then you've got a technology that's just such a beast to work with, and it just doesn't allow you to actually, show your creativity, and it's kind of holding you back to the same degree. Without the right processes in place that you said, we talk about blindfolded MDM here at CluedIn, is that, I should be able to do these things without worrying. I should know, first of all, what's the impact before I do something. Secondly, I need the ability to easily roll back and understand if there has actually been any damage. Because in this effort of speed, naturally mistakes are going to be made. And this is that, old age challenge of, do you lock things up, make it hard to get in, or do you open it up and then open that can of worms, right? And I think where the market is going is, obviously we oscillate back and forth, but the key thing for me is always, it's a healthy balance of both. It is a healthy balance of both. I remember one of our colleagues from Microsoft saying this is, just get started. That is one of the key things. Just get started. Data quality is an issue. Data is going to be a huge asset for you. If you work with the analysts, you'll know year after year for chief data officers, chief data analytics officers, they're saying, still haven't cracked data quality. Still haven't cracked data quality. And maybe I'll end our session with this statement. We at CluedIn think there's a really good reason why that hasn't been solved. And it's because really traditionally and historically, we haven't been able to bring the business in. These tools are thrown back to IT because as soon as they start mentioning things like, give me your foreign key. Sorry, what? I'm in HR and I'm really good at my job in HR. What's a foreign key and why is it important? And the truth is, it's not important that you know about that. But it's important is that you can look at data and help the IT and engineering team go, there's no way you're going to figure out that this is the same employee, but I've gone ahead and I've fixed that. And can you imagine IT and engineering going, well, thanks, that's great. And I think that is the void. And, at CluedIn, that's what we're hyper focused on is how do I bring those experts in, not require them to do technical, but require them to actually, I hired you in HR because you're really good at HR, not because you're savvy in data. Obviously, it would be a net positive if you had both. It could make things easier, but that's not the top bullet point on the job ad. It is, you're really good at finding talent or something like this. So that's what I want in the supply chain. Thanks as always, Lucas, for the chat.
Thank you for inviting me.